News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, relief is sweeping through markets and the world with the U.S. and Iran pulling away from the brink 40 days into the Middle East war. President Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire last night, subject to Tehran reopening the Strait of Hormuz. The move came hours after the president warned, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight if Iran did not give in to his demands. Pakistan mediated to urge the president to back away from that threat. Daniel Byman is director of the Warfare, Irregular Threats, and Terrorism Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
President Trump was clearly moving towards a decision moment. And today it was either going to be significant escalation or some sort of deal. And he can now claim that it was his threats that led the Iranians to the negotiating table. It's quite possible he could have gotten this deal several weeks ago, so I'm not quite sure that's right.
Daniel Byman with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi reports it remains to be seen whether this 2-week pause leads to a lasting end to hostilities.
Overnight, the National Supreme Security Council of Iran published 10 points, a very long missive that they published, and included in those points, other than the full lifting of sanctions, the end of hostilities, the withdrawal of U.S. from bases in the region, and control of the Strait. Obviously, many of those are non-starters for the U.S. They've also stipulated that the war against all of their components of the so-called axis of resistance should be halted immediately.
Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi reports President Trump is calling Iran's 10-point plan a workable basis for negotiations, and he says the U.S. will assist in allowing safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. The White House also says Israel has agreed to the ceasefire, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it does not extend to Lebanon, where Israel is waging a parallel war with Hezbollah.
Well, Nathan, reaction pouring in around the world to the temporary ceasefire. Dalia Fahmy is Director of International Relations and Diplomacy at Long Island University.
What we're seeing in this plan put forward is that Iran is actually perhaps putting a proposal for the future, for its future, a kind of guarantee, taking advantage of this moment. If you look at this on the U.S. side, the goalpost of so-called success has shifted significantly. Initially, it was complete regime change, then complete destruction of the ballistic military capacity, and then it moved to nuclear enrichment, and now it's simply opening the Strait of Hormuz, which is what we heard from President Trump today. The strait was open before the war. And so what this signals is that in terms of coming to the brink, which we were at just a few hours ago, it seems that Iran perhaps is in a position with a greater bargaining range than the United States is.
And that's Long Island University's Dalia Fahmy, who notes that both the U.S. and Iran are portraying the ceasefire as a victory, but significant differences remain between their demands to bring the war to a complete end.
Well, Karen, we are seeing huge movements in energy markets this morning. Checking oil once again. West Texas Intermediate crude is down more than 15.5%, trading above $95 a barrel. Brent is down more than 13%, just shy of $95. Refined product prices are falling as well, with benchmark European diesel futures dropping as much as 23%. Will Kennedy covers the energy markets for Bloomberg.
The big question, of course, is the terms under which they might be able to make those voyages. Iran has asserted its right to charge for passage and to control passage through the strait during the conflict, and has proposed a more permanent arrangement where it would levy fees on ships for passage. That will be controversial, to say the least, with the US and other countries around the world, and it will be very interesting to see how far Iran insists on that. But in the near future, traders will just want to see the ships move and for traffic to resume at some kind of pace, if not the pace before the conflict broke out.
Bloomberg's Will Kennedy says even with today's drop, WTI crude is still up more than 40% since the conflict began on the last day of February.
Well, Nathan, several airline executives say it will take several months to normalize, even if the Strait of Hormuz is open. And Nazaruddin Bakar is the CEO of the Malaysia Aviation Group.
The impact at the Middle East area, not only just the supply of the fuel and the crude oil, is at the refinery itself. Even if the war stops, I personally believe it's going to take many more months for the price to stabilize.
And Malaysia Aviation Group's Nazarudin Bakar made the comments at the International Air Transport World Data Symposium in Singapore.
Turning to equity markets this morning, they are jumping, led by NASDAQ futures up 3.5% or 845 points. S&P futures are up 2 2/3% or 177 points. And Dow futures higher by 1,128 points. That is a gain of almost 2.5%. In Europe, the Stoxx 50 is higher by 3.5%. And in Asia, Japan's Nikkei stock average closed higher by more than 5%.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.